Hey guys, my name's Khadroth, and I called it. Years ago, I called this. Basically, the devs have taken a stance for a long time in the game of, hey, we're not going to allow you guys to go all the way up to Bond 20. This resulted in some really negative feedback from the players because people have wanted Bond 20. People have been saying, like, why not, right? And at the same time we had the append system, we had basically this sort of elephant in the room where everybody was looking at the bonding system as sort of this kind of pain in the ass with regards to the coin structure for the append system. And again, that also translated into things like grailing to 120. So you had a lot of people that just didn't really like the way the system worked and were super upset with it. So the devs had come out over the years and said, like, hey, yeah, we understand, we'll fix it. And then anniversary after anniversary went by, and basically you had 9th anniversary where they actually came out with another one of my predictions, which was the 4th and the 5th append system. I'm sad that I was right on that one. Not that the 4th and the 5th append are bad, but that the devs were actually like, I say devs, it may not be the devs. It may be like, Aniplex behind them pushing it, but like they were stupid enough really to push the 4th and the 5th append out, despite knowing how the community felt about the system overall. And despite their entire live streams getting bombarded by people saying, fix the coins, fix the appends, like make it so that they can actually do something. So finally, the 9th Annie came out, they launched that 4th and the 5th append, and the entire community just blew up over it. And then, Mr. 2 quickly came out and said, hey, don't worry, we got this. We already know what the fixes are, and we're going to change things. So in that process, one of those fixes was he changed the amount of coins that you get from Bond. And you might be wondering, what does this have to do with like the actual discussion at hand here, which is the new quality of life? But the answer to this is that it actually goes hand in hand. Because the developers gave us out more coins for going all the way up through Bond 15, it kind of cemented in stone that you were never going to get a Bond 20. Bond 15 will probably be the last Bond level unless they expand the usage for coins. Because at the current point in time, the system kind of is fixed from the developer standpoint. Now, what this does mean, though, is that, again, as we don't get Bond 20, people are like, well, what do? I have all of these characters sitting here at max Bond, and I'm not able to use them efficiently. Some people don't care. They're just going to use whatever they're going to want to use. They're going to keep using their units at Bond 15, and there's no issue with that. But some people did care. Some people were like, wait a minute, hold on. I've reached Bond 15 with this character. Now I'm going to like go shelve them or put them in my second archive. I'm just not going to use them anymore. And other people, I'm kind of like the pragmatist in between both those approaches, where I say, look, at the end of the day, if a unit is Bond 15, I don't want to use them because it's not efficient. But, if they're my favorite or if the situation calls for it, I'll still use that unit. Like, I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot to not use it. But at the end of the day, I think the devs saw that this was a problem because the devs had stated their entire philosophy with not allowing Bond 20 was that they wanted people to roll more units. And that didn't really work. And I said this as such when they first made the announcement years ago. I'm like, that's not going to work out for them the way they think it is. Players are not going to go, oh man, I've Bond 15'd my Koyanskaya, better go out and roll another alternative to that. Because there is no alternative to a Koyanskaya. There is no alternative to a Castoria. You can get other units that can do similar stuff, that can function in a similar capacity and work as a replacement, but there is no true one-to-one replacement for a character that has an extremely unique kit. And so at that point, this became a little bit of an issue. So for years now, we've been wondering what the devs would do about it. And like I said, years ago, I predicted this issue was going to become a problem. And so I came up with this idea of Bond overflow, this concept that said, hey, look, what if, without allowing more bond levels to occur, you could still continue to use your favorite units and your support units that are like meta for you and already bond 15? What if you could continue to use them efficiently? It basically pleases the players because they get all the benefits still, and it actually will keep them more active in playing the game. And obviously, it's not going to make the devs more money. They're going to instead increase the efficiency of the player if they do that and allow them to get more bond rather than having players running around with a bond 15 not gaining any bond and kind of not gaining any quartz because of that. So the developer's incentive was probably never to do that. But thinking about it from a developer perspective, there's this little pesky thing called player retention. And that's directly tied in with player happiness. And it's like, if you want to keep your players around, if you want to keep them happy, give them what they want, especially if it's not going to be something that's going to shoot you in the foot. Getting a couple of extra bond quartz a year is not a huge deal to completely losing the player over time because of numerous annoyances and things that have kind of piled up for the player. So it's one of those just sort of goodwill earning type of things that I knew the developers were eventually going to have to pull the trigger on. It made a lot of sense from their perspective. But finally, here we are years later where the developers have come out and they have said, okay, here you go. Just like the system I was proposing back then, it's a system in which if you are at max bond, if you are at bond 15, now that character will give to somebody else 25% extra bond. So basically, everybody else in the party gets that 25%. It's really, really nice, really efficient in that regard. So the benefit to this sort of thing is going to be, again, that you get that efficiency back. That slot that would have been taken up by a bond 15 will now confer extra bond to the other unit, so you don't have to feel bad about using it. Now, obviously, you don't want to take in an entire composition of bond 15 units because then nobody's bonding. But what this does allow you to do is it allows you to still continue to use your favorites, use people that you've already bonded out, and basically still gain benefit from that. Doubly so because, again, you have the 20% extra bonding on the front line now, which was a huge hamstring when you couldn't gain extra bond. Now completely turns around and becomes a huge benefit now that you can gain extra bond. So it really works to the player's advantage now with this new system. This system has overnight changed things for how we should approach bond in FGO. Bonding has always been good, but the devs were hard incentivizing it to such an extent that it felt like they were just trying to get you to completely bond out your most used units and then gain no bonding over time from it. So with this change now you can continue to be able to bond everybody in your party to some extent, other than obviously the bond 15 units, but at least they're giving benefit. Now, this does not apply to a like friend support that you'll be taking. If a friend support is bond 15, obviously you can take them, but they're not going to give you a 25% extra bond increase. So it's only going to apply to your units. So that means you have 5 available slots to choose from. So similar deal here. If you have 5 available slots to choose from and one of your units is bond 15, they don't gain any bond, but they give everybody else in the party 25% extra. So it literally just transfers all the bond that they would have get. 4 other units get 25% extra, which is basically 100%. So it's actually efficient in that regard. There's no bond loss, no sort of issue with that. And I, for one, am just happy that one of the changes that I called did come true, because in a similar way to, append 4 and 5, it was a really, really good idea that was just extremely poorly executed. It had absolute tone-deaf timing from the developers in that regard. But it doesn't mean that the 4th and the 5th append are bad. In fact, the 5th append's really good for a lot of units out there. So it's actually a nice addition to the game overall. And ultimately, for better or worse, it was the catalyst that fixed the entire coin system for us. So in a same deal, now that we have bond overflow, we now have the capability of bonding guilt-free, in effect. And actually, this is similarly going to make bonding to get your coins for your appends and your grailing even easier and faster. So for people that were maybe having trepidations, maybe kind of on the fence as to whether or not they needed to slow roll their bonding, now you get to completely flip the switch back again to the old school way that we were, which was bond all the time. Bond as much as you can, as efficiently as you can, go full steam. For those of you guys on NA, you probably got 2 years until this comes out, unless it comes early, but it's still going to have a monumental impact, because now you know in the future there will be a point where your units will become efficient again. And that is amazing. In fact, to be honest, that's probably in a weird way a bigger change than even the entire grand system coming into the game in that regard. This represents a huge monumental win for the player, as opposed to the developers nickel and diming us and making it so we can't get more quartz and kind of sitting there being like, oh, well, I guess this unit's kind of bricked now, or I can't use them. So let me know what you guys think about the new bond system changes. I think this is fantastic. Obviously, I think some people would have preferred bond 20, but this at least allows us to continue to use our favorites. So again, let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll be curious to hear you guys' thoughts, and I will see you guys for the next one. Hey, if you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe, right?